how to start your own food bank / what have we learned about the society we live in since the pandemic started. My name is Jacob Forman and I'm the Social Action and Volunteer Coordinator at JW3. So first things first, it is really very, very easy to run a food bank. All you need to do is stage 1, identify if there is a need. Stage 2, get some food. And then stage 3, give the food to those people in need. So that's the end of my talk. Any questions? No. Right, not yet. Okay. Cool. So first of all, just to introduce myself a bit more. So I am from Redbridge and went to King Solomon High School, born and raised from here, even though I now work and still live here in Newbury Park, even though I work at JW3. I grew up in New Essex, Missouri before coming here to ELELS. And before I went to my current job, I have a background more in international development with placements where I was sent to the Philippines and to Ghana. And I also worked in other parts of the Jewish community as well, at Mitzvah Day, which is how I kind of first encountered ELELS, and at SEDEC as well, which is a Jewish international development organization. And now I'm the Social Action and Volunteering Programmer at JW3. And like all the best people, I support Leyton Orient, which does come up again later. So yeah. So JW3, just because I'm aware, not everyone will know what it is. So JW3 is a Jewish community and cultural centre. A lot of the time those things overlap, but not always. And it's on Finchley Road, which is right at the north end of the borough of Camden. Just before you get into Brent, I think is the next borough. So it's awful for parking, which anyone that's tried to visit there will know, but it's good for public transport by Finchley Road and Frogmore Station and by near the O2 Centre as well. It's been there for about 6 years now. Had a big opening, and so we're still pretty new and cutting edge. And before the pandemic in March, when we were forced to shut our doors, there were about 150 events every week there. So these went from language classes, history lectures, film screenings, because we've got cinema, theatre and much more, including social action as well, which is what I was there to do. So things like running a big mitzvah day and having a Challah for Hunger event every month or so. These were the sorts of where people would come in and cook challah, and then we'd sell it and donate the proceeds. These were the sorts of activities that I was doing. And also it had a kosher restaurant and cafe, which were called Zest Restaurant, which unfortunately shut its doors, and it's probably not ever going to come back, which is a real shame, I think. Okay, so just to put it on a map, if you're more of a map person, to know where it is, it's just, well, it's there, it's where the blue dot is. So you can see right where almost it says West Hampstead. And if you look at the surrounding areas, they are really place names which I think most people would associate with quite a well-off, well, in fact, a very well-off part of London. So we've got Hampstead here, where on the Heath, and West Hampstead is a very, very nice upmarket high street as well. St John's Woods to the south, and Swiss Cottage, Belsize Park. These places are really kind of known for being a nicer part of London, I think. And that was, I think, the perception that a lot of people had of where JW3 was located and the kind of immediate audience that it catered for as well. Although it also would work with the Jewish community of wider London as well. So how did I go from what I was doing to ending up running a food bank? So if you cast your mind back years and years, in March, when the lockdown first started, I was tasked with finding something useful to do with JW3 that was definite remit. And so that's what I did. I was casting my mind around. The building was completely shut because in the first lockdown, really much more so than the one we're coming out of now, everything was empty. There was no one, only essential workers were going to work. Everyone was working at home. So JW3 had one security guard who was their CST's advice, who would kind of patrol for a few hours a day, who could let me in. But apart from that, total nothing. No nursery, which is upstairs, nothing. So I racked my brain. I went on Twitter and Facebook to see what the big need was going to be, and I came up with a brilliant idea. We were going to provide car parking for medical staff. So there's a piazza outside of JW3, and I thought, well, no one else is using it. There's the Royal Free Hospital just down the road in Camden, and there was a big problem on Twitter mainly, where staff members were still somehow were being charged to park their cars in the car parks at hospitals because they weren't supposed to go on public transport, and then they had to pay because the car parks were run by different organisations. So we were going to offer our piazza. Now that didn't work out, luckily, in the end, because instead we ended up running this food bank. So stage one was identifying the need. We had to look at what actually we could do that was really useful to people. Now, I'm going to go back a stage and just give you some statistics which came out right at the start. So these are actually supplied by the Trussell Trust mainly, and then amalgamated by Camden Council. So these are nationwide statistics, not just located to Camden, as you'll see, which was in the first 3 weeks of lockdown. So taken during April, I think at the end of April, these statistics were published. The Trussell Trust, which is a nationwide food bank network of food banks, noticed an 89% increase in need during April of 2020 compared to April of 2019. From surveys done, 350,000 children nationwide hadn't had enough to eat, and although 238,000 children had skipped a meal within 3 weeks of lockdown because of financial pressures. And then it was exacerbated if anyone was self-isolating or shielding, because you didn't necessarily have people, even if some of them were able to, could maybe afford it, but then couldn't get a delivery slot from Tesco's or Sainsbury's or a supermarket. If you cast your mind way back when, that was a big issue, that there weren't enough delivery drivers. And this really had a knock-on effect. So this is kind of the nationwide picture which we were looking at back at the start of lockdown. Now, to go back now to where JW3 was, I'd been having a discussion with a wonderful little organisation called Feast, and this organisation was one which had existed. It's tiny, it has a staff of 2 people, and they would meet on an ad hoc basis and would go to places such as a shelter for people with homelessness, women's refuges, and rescue food or donated from supermarkets and cook it for those people in need. But when lockdown happened, all of their kitchens had shut. Now, I'd been talking to them anyway because they wanted to come and do something at JW3, and so we said, oh, maybe that's That could be something that we work with. Maybe let's talk about October, we'll start. But when lockdown happened and I was looking for this need because I had to do something social actiony to justify my own employment at the time. So we had this conversation and it turned out that they really needed a kitchen, and JW3 does have a kitchen. So now we had a need. Feast needed the food. Stage 2 was getting the food. Well, like I mentioned, we had a kosher restaurant at JW3 called Zest, and it shut down. So I could use all the food that they had left when lockdown was announced, which was great. Feast had their kitchens also shut down, so they sent us some food as well. And on April 21st, a week after we'd put a very kind of low-key shout out on Facebook, on JW3's Facebook pages, saying, does anyone want to come and help cook? And I dragged along PA as well to give me a hand. We had our very first cook. So you can see this is actually, lockdown was announced 27th of March, I believe. It didn't happen the next day. It took us a couple of weeks to get up and running. So yeah, so like I say, food comes to us from Feast's shut down kitchens, and that apostrophe isn't a typo. Their name has a exclamation mark there, which makes spell checking very tricky because it always capitalizes the word afterwards. So Feast shut down their kitchens. We made 32 meals because we were replacing a kitchen that was around the corner, and so we knew exactly who it was that normally would get food from that kitchen and didn't this time. And we had 4 volunteers plus myself, one of which was PA. Then there was 2 other volunteers fulfilling stage 3, which was getting the food to the people in need. So they didn't come to JW3 because of social distancing. Instead, we took our cooked food to them. And honestly, I'm not a professional chef. None of the volunteers were professional chefs. It wasn't the tastiest food, but it was healthy. So this is what kind of all the food that we got looked like. That's our delivery drivers there, those 2, whose names I cannot remember at all. And these were star volunteers as well. So we did take a video, so I can show you kind of what it looked like the first time we did it. You can see I haven't been able to get a haircut since. Right, after we started doing this, we carried on doing it, and after a while, people came to us and started to ask for food packages. So instead of just for hot cooked food, because there were people surrounding us that needed the food, but they said, well, we can cook ourselves. We're not kind of vulnerable in that sense. We just we can't get food. We can't afford it. And there was one charity in particular that asked us for this, called Doorstep Homeless Families Project, which houses 48 homeless families in Swiss Cottage. If you know Swiss Cottage at all, it's just behind the Waitrose there. And so we said, okay, fine, we'll ask. Camden Council actually made a formal introduction because they'd asked for them and had heard about our work. And they gave us kind of a small van's worth of food to give us, and we still had some food left over from Zest as well, some tins. So we put it into packages and 48's worth, and sent it down to Doorstep Homeless Families Project. Each food parcel, and it's just a carrier bag's worth of shopping, contains about 15 meals worth of food. So that gets one person through 5 days, really. And so we would do more food parcels for if there were bigger families, because we couldn't because of GDPR, we're not actually allowed that much data at this point for these families. So we could only really get some very kind of vague numbers. And also we were all working on donations that come in, because we can't guarantee any food. We've just got what we managed to get from a donation, we'll give you, and that's it. So it wasn't particularly advanced in terms of the sophistication of what we can offer, but it's better than nothing. And just to let you know now, when it's 15 meals worth, it's there's not an exact science behind how many meals are provided. And this is true across the food bank kind of industry, for want of a better word, because it's very difficult to tell, because for instance, a box of cereal will often say on it that there's 12 servings in a box, but if we just gave someone a box of cereal and said, there you go, we fed you for 5 days now because you've got 3 meals a day for 4 days, that most people wouldn't really accept that you've actually fed someone. So you've got to kind of work it out and think realistically, how many meals will this person get out of this? But it's not an exact science, but it's about 15 meals worth. That's the, and still when we do one, each pack is about 15 to 20 meals worth is how we think. So we work out when we're going to make up the packs, right? How do we get to about 15 meals? Oh, we've got a kilo of potatoes we can offer. So that will be kind of the sides for a few meals, and we can get, my mind's gone blank of any other food apart from potatoes and cereal. So sorry, I'm going to run out of examples now. Right, so this became a weekly project, and we started soliciting donations from the public. So we put out on social media, JW3, and in our newsletters and things, because we've got a very, very good media department, asking for people from donations from the public, and the public responded amazingly. Because people couldn't come to drop it off at JW3, pardon me, from social distancing, what people did was they set up their front gardens, people lucky enough to have front gardens, with people put boxes in their front gardens and sent messages around to their neighborhoods, to what's neighborhood WhatsApp groups, neighborhood Facebook pages, saying I'm collecting for a food bank at JW3 on your designated half an hour piece of exercise for each day. Maybe you could drop in some tins or something that we can take down to the food bank. And we did. And so from the public, we actually got enough to run these 48 food packages each week, because then one person could do it and it was a much easier journey to make. And this was and again, we had different volunteers come to help us distribute the food. So this here is Siobhan, who would come in her own car every week, and she would pack up and then deliver it to us, to the doorstep homeless families. If you will notice, she's holding that bag because it's a JW3 tote bag, which we very soon ran out of because we didn't have any carrier bags, and no one at work has actually noticed yet, but they will at some stage come and ask me what happened to all the tote bags. But we'll cross that bridge when it's noticed. So we continued, we carried on, and so we get more and more requests because our fame was spreading. So more and more requests were coming in, and we got our first very nice donation from the Felix project. More about that later. So we carried on using the leftovers as long as possible. Obviously this food here wouldn't have lasted very long because it's all fresh produce, but there was some that we could. And we also got foods donated from supermarkets. Marks and Spencer's food halls in particular were really good. I have to give a shout out to them, in that they would agree to give us any food which they didn't have sold for that day, for a week, which was about to go off. We could come and collect it and then take it. And so PA and myself spent a few evenings driving around what was supposed to be very convenient because they were nearby to JW3 in Mill Hill. If we got there at 10 o'clock, just as they shut, they would go and take all the fresh produce that they hadn't sold and they would give it to us. Now, it's not actually convenient when you live in Newbury Park and then you've got to go to Mill Hill and get the food and then come home and then next day go back to JW3. But it got us food. And so we did. So that's what we did. And actually, I'm going to back just to, because I didn't put this in a slide, but it's an amusing aside that I should to mention is that JW3 being a huge building has rubbish collection isn't done by the council, it's done by a contract. And when lockdown happened, this contract finished, which meant there was no waste collection, which meant that after every cooking session, my car turned into, it had been the food, the delivery van in the morning, and then it would turn into the rubbish truck in the afternoon. And I would bring home all the waste and the cuttings and sneak them into my neighbour's bins and hope no one noticed. And so far, no one has. This is being recorded, isn't it? I probably should have asked for, maybe we can edit that out. Right, so we carried on doing this, and sooner or later, I've kept a very good track of how many meals we were sending out, and very soon we got to this. So you may have noticed in there something which I hadn't mentioned yet, but I'm going to go back to talk about it now because I forgot it was in there. So I've put it here afterwards, which is how we really hit the big time. So on the 20th of May, so after we've been running this kind of purely on public donations and food which we could scrounge from Marks and Spencer's, supermarkets, I got a phone call from Camden Council who were aware of our work and was told that they had a lorry load of food. Could we help store it then? Which had come to Camden Council because of one generous person who wished to remain anonymous. No, he didn't, but I've forgotten his name. Who was a mad Arsenal fan. And so he donated this food to the Arsenal Foundation. And then the council basically didn't have anywhere to store it, but someone on the council was a regular at JW3. And so knew that we had a big building that wasn't being used for anything at the moment. So could we store it? It was about 12 tons worth of food, but they didn't bring it all to us, quite a few pallets. And to sweeten the deal, because we were doing some food bank work, we could keep some of it for our recipients that we'd got. So after some hasty arrangements, we got the yes. And as you can see, a huge articulated lorry turned up, completely blocked the road, and came into our piazza like this. It was an Arsenal Foundation. It came to us through one person called his organisation making this donation to the Arsenal Foundation, who offered it to Camden, because I think Islington, where Arsenal is, had already said no. And Raymond Simonson, our CEO and mad Spurs fan, and me, mad Leyton Orient fan, gritted our teeth and said, fine, we'll take it if Arsenal really want to give it to us that badly. So we did, we took it, as you can see, and now, why is this not? Okay, there we go. So there it is, after unloading some of it for, that was for Camden's own media to say how wonderful they were and giving us all this food, and I managed to sneak into the picture as well. You can see looking very smug next to some hula hoops. And this really kicked up our operations quite a bit, because suddenly we were looking at tonnage, which is much bigger than kind of 48 people can handle. And we were unloading it. But at this point, really kind of the darkest episode of our food bank operation, which was biscuits everywhere. This entire pallet was strewn across our piazza with chocolate digestives. It was everywhere, you know. We even had this chap here who's called, in the black t-shirt, that's Alex. He's the head of Camden Council's entire food provision, and he was on hands and knees cleaning up chocolate digestives from our piazza. Disaster. It was awful. Right, we unloaded 12 tons, which is, as I mentioned, a lot of food, really more than we could handle. See, it's all, and that's what it looks like. And it was into Zest, which is not, so this was our restaurant, and we had to clear all the tables and chairs to the side. At this point, we thought Zest was going to be reopening when in the, at any moment when things got better. Hasn't worked out that way, but yeah, so we cleared a massive space and we did it. But now we're having so much food, we could support more people. At which point, we can go back to stage one, which was, as I mentioned, which was finding people in need. Because now we've got more food, we can help more people. So are there any more people that we can help? Long story short, yes, there were lots more people we could help. So we started with additional cooking sessions. So instead of just having one, which had been every Tuesday, we now had more. On Thursdays, we started cooking for Jamie and Gift. Jamie, as we'll all know, because it's our one of our adopted charities at ELELS this year. And Mel, you can give much more details about the work Jamie does. But it's the Jewish Association of Mental Illness. And so they had a lot of potential recipients that for a variety of reasons couldn't leave their house, and so would be really appreciative of a hot cooked meal. And at JW3, our kitchen, although not chesed, is run completely along kosher lines, so we could kind of fulfill that need. And the same with Gift, which is a food which has recipients already for just people, for Jewish recipients as well. And on Wednesdays, we could start cooking for the Single Homeless Project, or SHP, which is for people suffering from homelessness, and they have some sites in the borough of Camden. And we also put the word out that we had food that could get given away to a few more networks that were starting to be set up, because a lot of people had set up mutual aid groups, which were neighbours but were looking out for each other. If they knew they had a particularly vulnerable neighbour, they would do some shopping and take it round to them. And we were kind of getting into these networks that were already existing, and people were asking us to help. In the end, currently, this is what our list of partners looks like. I'm not going to test you on all of these, but We have a lot. So in terms of recipients, we have Doorstep, we're still working with them, the Hampstead Volunteer Corps, COVID Relief, Mutual Aid Group, referrals direct from the council, which I'm going to go into a bit more later, the Kilburn Older Voices, Camden New Journal, Sacred Heart Church on Quex Road, SHP, Temp Hostels, the Streets Cafe have got their own network as well. We've even sent some hot food to NHS workers on occasion, yeah, we've got the donors have, because we started this work once we had the thing, once we got the lorry load, it snowballed from there, and Camden Council saw what we were doing, and as the second lockdown happened, they asked us to be one of their anchor food banks for the borough, which meant no matter what happened, they would make sure us, along with 5 other food banks for the whole borough of Camden, would always be well supplied, and we would always keep going, no matter how much the lockdowns started again. So we're now designated as one of the 6 never-ending food banks of Camden, where everyone will come to us in the case of a lockdown. And to that end, to help us out, they hooked us up with the Felix Project, and they made this link. Felix Project is another nationwide charity which rescues food from supermarkets that would go into landfill. Either it's too close to its sell-by date, or it's simply the wrong shape for people to buy, because food's got to be very careful for some reason. Yeah, people don't want wonky carrots, etc. And take it and give it to people that can use it. And so we get now a whole van full of food from them every week, which covers our needs. It's about 3/4 of a ton, I think, a week that they give us. And they're a really amazing charity. And it stopped us having to go to supermarkets late in the evening to pick stuff up. And so, yeah, we've got our evenings back. Cool. So who do we help? This is a very incomplete map of our referrals that come direct from Camden Council. So the whole network of the borough of Camden, we're from social workers to teachers and healthcare workers, have now report back centrally to Camden Council, and Camden Council then, if they deem someone in need at least, then they can refer it to one of those 6 food banks, of which that includes us. So this is a very kind of limited map, and I had to zoom out a bit because of GDPR. I can't risk anyone working out an address from the map. But of the referrals, these are the first, I think, 20 or 30 that we received. And they're supposed to be in this box, which is just around JW3. But some of them have gone wrong. And so you can see they're slightly out of the box, but we get deliveries to them anyway. So there's a high percentage around Kilburn, which is kind of expected because it's not as affluent as the other areas. But also there's some areas which are really thought of as incredibly affluent. So West Hampstead, Belsize Park, Swiss Cottage, and even this blue dot right down in the corner next to the British Library in Bloomsbury. We're delivering food, which is in the borough of Camden, which I didn't realise before, but we're delivering food right into central London. I am actually trying to stop delivering food there, not because we don't want to or because the person doesn't need to, but it's just a long way. So I have to get a volunteer delivery driver to drive all that way into London. And people that lived on the same road as JW3, which is a nice road on Finchley Road, were knocking on our door and asking for food. And we made a decision that we're never going to turn anyone around, turn anyone away, because it's almost not for us to be means testing people. So we really had our eyes opened about the need which existed and was quite hidden, I think, to a lot about what was really the neighbourhood that we lived in, that you could go and see some of the nicest properties in London in a 5-minute walk in one direction. But on the way, you will be passing front doors where behind there are people going hungry and children going hungry as well. Just to bring you back to these statistics, the same statistics I showed you earlier, but no one knows exactly where these 350,000 children are that did not have enough to eat, but we should all be very confident that there are some of them that live very close to us in London, in Redbridge as well. And I can send you a link to kind of the Redbridge equivalent of the Camden ones that I work with. But in Redbridge and Camden, across London and across England and the UK, there are people that go hungry. And as soon as you find out, you make an offer that you've got food that can help, that can go to people, they'll come out of the woodwork. And once you've seen it, it's hard to unsee it. And a lot of these problems were here in our society beforehand, and the COVID-19 crisis brought it to the fore, because suddenly some people were, including us, JW3, were suddenly so much more aware of it. And once we started trying to work on it, we became even more aware of what it was like. So where's the food bank currently? So we get about half a ton a week. I think I said 3/4 earlier, but we get half a ton a week, which is rescued from supermarkets or donated by the public. We still get a lot of donations from the public, which is great. And the food that's rescued mainly comes from the Felix Project, as I mentioned. We cook 3 times a week. There's a mutual aid group on Tuesdays, people suffering from homelessness, Jamie, gift not so much anymore. And we've got 150 households a week. So not people, but households that come mainly from Camden Council referrals now. That's our main source. So people that know to the borough and they're directed to us. And I was really hoping to get to 75,000 meals today. Unfortunately, I didn't. We are currently at 74,960 meals sent out from JW3. And I think, and of these 75,000 meals, it is just me that is the staff member at JW3. Not a single other person that's working on this is paid. It is entirely all done by volunteers. Most of them come willingly. Some I drag along as well from home, but this is an impossible task for one person to do at JW3, and so I haven't done it. It is the volunteers to do that have done the main bulk of all the heavy work. I just get to claim the credit. So what have we learned about our society? That's kind of the tagline, which is, on the one hand, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen the poverty and the need that have always been around us. And even though we thought that JW3 was in a really leafy, nice Hampstead borough and poverty is not an immediate problem, actually it was. And now that our eyes have kind of been open to this, we cannot shut them again. But also, we've seen just how amazing and kind society is, and I think that doesn't get mentioned as much as well. When you watch the news, it's very, very difficult to kind of come out positively looking at humanity. But like I said, this is really done by volunteers. So this is all been happening by people that just really want to help other people and have seen this need and want to get involved. And all I've done at JW3 is give other people that chance to do it. So we've got about 120 regular volunteers that can be called on a rota when we need cooking and food bank packing and delivery. And we've got one member of staff who is me, and that's all that we've had to work on this project. There's been even more volunteers that have kind of been informal, so they're not regular. They've come in and they've done one shift and that's all we've been able to do, and I haven't fully counted on all of that, but yeah. So that's kind of the story of how JW3, of how I ended up running a food bank, food provision project at JW3, and how we are. And I just want to leave you with the thought, or finish my talking, that the public are wonderful if you give them a chance. It'd be my big takeaway. And here are some of our wonderful people that have come and have helped us. I don't have any cheesy music to go as all these pictures come up, but if you'd like to play your own, go for it. And yeah, so that is kind of the end of what I had to say. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. And there's a few questions, so I'm gonna, let's see. Yeah, I was already committed to some very needed causes, Rabbi Pete, which is Leyton Orient. Yeah, and you can blame my dad for that. I never got the choice on that one. And yeah, you've already come into contact with Felix Project as well, which is really nice. Cool. And yeah, a very good point about parents as well. Cool. So does anyone have any kind of questions which they want to ask? Feel free to unmute and go.
I have a question.
Sure.
I had to sort of hold back. My son, you can probably hear him, he's whittering away in the background with his friends. They're playing something on the console together. So I apologize for that if it comes through. I understand that you and other organizations have been lobbying the government and local authorities for a longer term strategy to tackle food insecurity. What can you give us an idea? What would you be looking for? I mean, you know, free school meals, for that to be rolled out over the holidays, I guess that would be one thing, but what kind of things are you really looking to be implemented?
So it's quite a difficult question for me to answer, because so a food bank is almost a sticking plaster over a problem, and the problem is people going hungry, not having enough to eat. And so that's all we really provide, is just a sticking plaster. And to fix the whole problem is very much almost a structural society change which needs to happen. Now it could be the government decides to feed people direct or more directly, like you mentioned with the free school meals, very highly public campaign that went on recently. And you're right, that would be a way of the government doing it. So what's been set up in Camden at the moment, which is really positive, is that whenever there's a food bank which has the opportunity to offer something more, so a lot have IT technicians that can give people, that are happy to teach people computer skills, that gets listed as well at Camden Central Database, and they provide that as well. So if someone needs something additional, there are now ways that they're kind of looked at in the system, but it's difficult for me to answer that question really fully, because honestly, I don't know. And we're providing that safety net, and the dream is that no one needs a safety net anymore. That's kind of the end goal. So we have to carry on being a safety net until it's not needed anymore. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be coming down the road at the moment. It seems to be going the opposite direction. And I think we're seeing more and more people ask and get referred to us. And so, yeah, we're going to still be here putting them on that plaster until someone comes with a leg that can fix it properly. So 2 questions. So what are the thoughts about longer term future, especially as and when JW3 reopens? So the room which we use at JW3 for the food bank is currently is going to be kept as the food bank. So it's running. We have no plans to shut anytime soon. And in actual fact, it's probably going to become, this is a state of the world. Everything has to be funding dependent, but it may well become a permanent feature of JW3, that there is going to be a JW3 food bank. And definitely as the social action coordinator, that's what I'm hoping for, but it's a case of filling out a lot of forms asking for funding for that to be permanent, because we make a lot of our revenue as a venue hire. So people hosting birthdays and simchas and stuff at JW3, and the room which we've taken out of commission for that is now can no longer be hired. So JW3 has lost a revenue stream. So when we reopen, we've got to replace that from somewhere, and I'm hoping that that's going to be able to come from fundraising and grant applications so that we can keep it. But definitely in the kind of medium term, it's not going anywhere. Probably definitely not until kind of midway through 2021, and then there might be a reckoning and we'll have a look and see where we are. But until then, Ben, a lot of people who might have considered setting up a voluntary product like this might have been put off by concerns about legal issues when catering for people. How did you satisfy yourself that you could meet all the safety requirements? That is a very, very good question, Ben, one which I didn't touch on at all. So how did I satisfy myself? I spent a bank holiday, which bank holiday? August bank holiday, doing the health and safety level 3 certificate. I should have left it up on the walls if I was a doctor, because that thing is very, very long. It's not the most exciting, but it had to be done. So, and that is, so I'm now a food health and safety inspector up to the level of someone that like, it's the same level as if you're supervising a kitchen. So that's how we satisfy all the health and safety standards, which is basically, I lost a bank holiday, a really boring course, but boring but essential course. So I shouldn't be that mean about it. So yeah, now the law about it, because I was trying to work out how much I needed to do. If you're doing something on an ad hoc basis for charity and less than once a month, then you don't need to get something inspected. So if you're going to do a one-off, I'm going to cook for this, for a shelter or a refuge or something, or just hand it out in the street, then you can do that without getting kind of into anything, any legal requirements. But after that, you do need to start getting some requirements, and so that's what I did. So does that answer the question? I think, hopefully. Cool, great. Any more questions? Or hand back over to Nick and just say.
Rabbi Pete Tobias has got a question.
Yeah, just very quickly, maybe I missed the beginning. I know that you said that there was a kind of 3 stages, and the first stage of setting up a food bank was to find out what the local need was.
Yes.
I have set up a local food bank. I went straight to stage 2. I've now got quite a place to collect food and people to collect it from, and now I need to find out where I should distribute it to. It's not the same level as yours. We're not going to start preparing food and cooking. It's just distributing. Set it up in one edge of the area that this place is in is Radler, so I seem to have an enormous surfeit of quinoa that I'm going to have to distribute to somebody.
Yeah.
Well, the question is, how would do you have any suggestions as to how I might now go about finding out what the need is in the area? I mean, obviously not in Radler itself, because those of you know Radler doesn't really fall into that category. But there are other areas nearby that I suspect
So one, I think you'd probably be surprised what's in Radlett, even if you didn't think it's that kind of area. But,
much less than there was once, wasn't it?
Yeah. Also, that's something that is quite funny. You get waves of food when it's being rescued. So you'll have kind of 2-3 week phases where there's been a glut of sweet potato, so you just get nothing but that. I did after kind of up until 2 weeks ago, I was getting so many pumpkins because all the ones which were grown for Halloween but never got sold were suddenly being rescued from landfill. But so all of our recipients either got a pumpkin in their parcel or probably became very sick of kind of sweet potato and pumpkin stew. So what I would recommend is go to the local authority, which at Radlett will be Hertfordshire. And they will probably actually know themselves. They will be able to link you up. The Trussell Trust can give you an idea as well, because they've got a very good interactive map of finding where your local Trussell Trust is, and they're generally pretty good at kind of directing you. And the other one is make use of social media. Put out. I have
hungry out there. Just outside, everybody hungry out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you'd be pretty much. I would. A word of advice is don't use your personal phone number, because I did at the start. I was just because when I wasn't running it, I was using my own number, and actually, and so I had a couple of weekends which were sort of very emotionally difficult, where my phone was just buzzing non-stop. People saying, "Can you please feed me? Can I get added onto your list?" And so now I've got a work number which I use, although I actually still had one today. Turns out Citizens Advice are giving out my personal phone number in Camden, which this is a good reminder, because I meant to get onto them and ask them to switch to my work number, and I forgot to do that today. But set up a way and put out on social media, and I think you'll be surprised at what comes back.
Okay, I mean, I'm doing it through Facebook at the moment. It's the mostly Radlett focused, because it's the Radlett Village Group that's seen them. The Radlett Village Group is a Radlett Village Group.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. But okay, no, that's helpful. Thanks. And certainly the local authority suggestions. I'm also going to tap the local schools, because I know the head teacher of them, so I'll go direct to her. Brilliant. No, thanks. That's helpful. Thank you.
And
thank you, Jacob. Of all the, just to conclude, of all the impressive and potentially intimidating figures who are present tonight for you, you forgot to mention perhaps the most impressive, and that is none other than Stuart, the chairman of ELELS, and he would like to share a few words.
Hello, Jacob and PA, thanks. Not sure how impressed with it. Not a very good figure, Nick, I'm afraid. Anyway, I try my best. First of all, hello, Jacob and PA. Of course, we've not got together, so I haven't actually been able to introduce myself and say hello. So, hello, welcome from Ruth and me. Nice to welcome you into our community. Well, you've been part of it for a long time, I think. Thank you for a very interesting talk this evening. I mean, I knew nothing. I mean, we know of food banks, but don't know what goes on in the organisation. So thanks for explaining it, how it all started. It's truly fantastic what you've done. Of course, we all know that food banks shouldn't exist in a country such as this, but reality is as it is. So yeah, thanks to you, thanks to PA and all the volunteers for so much that you've done. And like you, I'm sure we all hope that the generosity that everyone's shown in these times, within our synagogue, in the community and everywhere, will once the pandemic is over, will be remembered, and perhaps we can change our values in society, we hope. So thank you for tonight. Thank you also for your magnificent shofar blowing, and good luck to Leyton Orient, although other football teams are available. So thanks very much, Jacob. Thanks, PA, and see you all soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.